huge election year in the United States, November 2006. Many battles to be fought for key seats in, of course, the Senate and the House, which ultimately could determine the balance of power in Congress.
What you wanna do with your life when you grow up?
We need to make sure that public safety is our first and foremost.
Searching for G's in the dark where you washed up, picking me out of
The Republican Party doesn't acknowledge the Filipino American Party.
Run with the bulls down on Pamplona.
I don't think that political parties here in the United States should be addressing people by their race.
This I say to you.
In America, it isn't equal. It isn't an equal society, and we need to deal with those truths before we can move on.
I will try real hard to give them all.
We have two panels, one Democrat, one Republican. Hopefully we'll see which side represents the Filipino Americans better.
Filipino Americans here in California are missing the fact that the Democratic Party does not represent their ideals and their values.
Republicans don't want to hear about the statistics that show Filipino Americans are dropping out of college. They don't want to hear about what diseases might affect Filipino Americans different than other ethnicities.
I would much rather have my elected officials and everybody else look at me and see American instead of looking at me and seeing, oh, he's Filipino.
You're negating history when you talk like that. The history of this country is based on slavery, racism, and exploitation. The Democratic Party is inclusive. It throws a wide net for people of every kind.
If people are dropping out of college, that is the problem. You address it for everybody, not just Filipino Americans.
We don't divide the pie. We make it bigger.
You make it bigger for the wealthiest in the state.
Not really.
Whereas you cut welfare programs to the poor.
No.
And, those small pieces of pie, like the poor, people with disabilities, you keep cutting those funds.
We are a working group. We are self-sufficient. When the Republican Party makes the economy better for everybody, we thrive as a community.
That's not right.
The governor is an immigrant himself, so who better can understand the plight that immigrants face than someone who is an immigrant?
Making it a crime for a person who wants to help an undocumented
It
alien.
denies the fundamental fairness of America's immigration laws. Everybody in the world has the right to immigrate to the United States. And hold on.
Pick one group.
Right,
Or
right.
come to the United States.
It's
And
not
for
just that,
you
but-
to say that, like, you support the Republican Party because you believe in family values, what we would do if we do kick out these undocumented immigrants, we'd be breaking families up.
What about the broken up families because Filipinos aren't able to immigrate their entire families here because there's so much illegal immigration that the State Department has to keep hard caps on the people who can immigrate legally from the Philippines? Where's the justice?
A 700-mile fence across Mexico? I mean, it was supposed to be the Great Wall of China of the United States.
We would love people to come from other countries legally to follow our laws. By breaking our laws, they are outlaws.
The Republican Party is so wrong about this because they have their blinders on, just like going with, like, there's no such thing as race.
There's this great myth that the United States desperately needs millions upon millions of unskilled laborers. Wages are so low for farm laborers. Why? Because we have such a glut of labor. What happens if all of those illegal immigrants leave and all of a sudden there's nobody to do the work? Labor wages are going to go up for those people. They're so easy to manipulate because they're not sophisticated.
The illegals are taking the jobs that the Americans doesn't want to do, like the farmers. Because when you convert that money, that little pittance, and send it home, that converts to a big money.
We're here at San Jose State University to ask Filipino students whether they vote Democrat or Republican.
I don't know much about that.
63% of our respondents had no opinion.
My generation is growing up in fear. Young kids going to war, and that's who's being affected is young people of color.
We don't want to give terrorists a signal that we're pulling out and that public safety is compromised.
Bottom line is, it's the oil.
This is the war on terror.
If it was about oil, our gas prices would be a lot lower.
I'd like to ask how the Republicans can call themselves the party of the people when they're cutting taxes to the richest 5% in the country, when the country's on the verge of bankruptcy.
If you look at the proportion of the taxes paid in this country, the rich pay a bigger share of the taxes in this country.
The basic tenet of republicanism is all about economic development.
We need to come out together, and no matter what party you're on, to speak with a loud voice and make sure that we're heard.
Before you go out and vote, really sit down and examine your values. I encourage you to look at the different political parties, regardless if you're leaning Democrat or Republican. That way, when you go to the polls, you vote and you vote from the heart.
Be heard! Stand up and speak out!